A 4-year-old beggar girl faints from hunger, but is kicked by a shopkeeper until a millionaire grabs him by the neck. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The scorching midday sun beat down on the dusty streets of Willow Creek when Iris stumbled for the last time. Her small, bare feet, bruised by the uneven stones of the sidewalk, finally gave way in front of Harrison's fabrics. The 6-year-old girl collapsed to the ground like a rag doll, her brown hair plastered to her sweaty face, her parched lips slightly parted in search of air. Walter Harrison, the store owner, watched the scene through the window with growing irritation. At 52, he had built his business reputation on order and respectability. Beggars at his doorstep represented everything he despised: disorder, filth, and a bad impression on customers. "Get out of here, kid," Walter shouted, stomping out of the store. "Go beg somewhere else. This isn't a charity house." Iris tried to get up, but her legs trembled violently. It had been 2 days since she had eaten anything other than some leftover bread she had found in the trash behind the bakery. Her large, dark eyes, which once shone with the joy typical of childhood, now reflected only emptiness and resignation. "I'm not a beggar, sir," she murmured in a weak voice. "I was just resting." "Resting where? On my doorstep?" Walter approached, menacingly. "You're scaring away my customers. Just look at you, dirty, stinking. It's a disgrace." Without hesitation, the shopkeeper kicked the girl's leg, causing her to groan in pain. Iris cowered on the ground, protecting her head with her small, thin arms, preparing for more aggression. This was how adults treated her lately, as a nuisance, a problem to be removed. "Stop that right now!" The authoritative voice cut through the air like a whip. Walter turned around, meeting the furious gaze of Richard Davenport. The 45-year-old businessman approached with determined steps, his broad shoulders casting a protective shadow over Iris. "Walter, you don't understand," Walter began, trying to justify himself. "This girl is here every day, scaring away—" "I understand perfectly," Richard interrupted, grabbing Walter by the collar of his shirt. "You just kicked a hungry child. She's just another street urchin." Richard's hand tightened around the shopkeeper's neck, squeezing enough to make him understand that he wasn't kidding. Walter swallowed hard, feeling the power and determination of the man who controlled a large part of the local economy. "You're going to apologize to her now," Richard ordered, his voice low but full of threat. Sorry, kid," Walter stammered, glancing quickly at Iris before scurrying back into the store. Richard knelt beside Iris, observing the child's deplorable condition. Her clothes were just dirty rags. Her arms, as thin as twigs, revealed severe malnutrition. But it was when she looked up at him that something broke inside the businessman's chest. There was a strange dignity in those childlike eyes, a silent strength that reminded him of something painfully familiar. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected his own miserable childhood, before the fortune, before the recognition, when he was also just a hungry child struggling to survive. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Iris," she replied, trying to wipe her face with her dirty hands. "When was the last time you ate something, Iris?" The girl hesitated, as if making difficult calculations. "The day before yesterday. I think it was the day before yesterday. Mrs. Johnson gave me a piece of bread." Richard felt his stomach churn. A small child hasn't eaten in 2 days. Without thinking twice, he picked Iris up in his arms, surprised at how light she was. "Let's go to my house," he said. "You need food and medical care." "I don't have any money to pay," Iris murmured, ashamed. "You don't have to pay anything. Sometimes people just help each other out." During the drive to his mansion in the city's upscale neighborhood, Richard watched how Iris reacted to everything with silent curiosity. She didn't cry, she didn't complain, She just absorbed every detail of the world around her with a disturbing maturity for her age. "Where are your parents?" he asked carefully. "My mom left 2 months ago. She left a note saying she'd be back, but—" Iris shrugged with a resignation that broke Richard's heart. "I live alone now." "Alone? A 6-year-old? I can take care of myself. I found an abandoned studio apartment in the Hope neighborhood. The door doesn't lock properly, but it's better than sleeping on the street." When they arrived at the mansion, Eleanor Davenport was watering the plants in the front garden. Richard's daughter, a 28-year-old architect, stopped immediately when she saw her father carrying an unknown and clearly helpless child. "Dad, what's going on?" she asked, approaching cautiously. "This is Iris. She needs our help," Richard explained, heading straight to the kitchen. Eleanor followed them, watching with growing apprehension as her father sat the girl at the table and began preparing a plate of food. There was something in his determination that made her uneasy. It was the same expression he had when making important business decisions that changed everything. "Dad, can we talk?" she asked, pulling him discreetly aside. "Later, Eleanor. She needs to eat now." Iris ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the last. Her table manners were surprisingly polite for a child living on the streets, and she thanked them for every small gesture of kindness. As he watched the girl eat, Richard felt a strange peace filling his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if a long-forgotten purpose was finally revealing itself, but deep down, a voice whispered that this decision would change everything in his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. After Iris finished eating, Eleanor finally managed to talk to her father in the study. Her brown eyes, inherited from her deceased mother, shone with a mixture of concern and contained irritation. "Dad, you can't just bring a strange child into our house," she argued, closing the door behind her. "We don't know anything about her, about the family." "I know she was starving in front of us," Richard replied, loosening his tie. "That's enough for me." "But it's not enough for me." Eleanor's voice rose an octave. "What if she has health problems? What if her family comes looking for her? Have you thought about the legal implications?" Richard watched his daughter carefully. Since Carmen, his wife, passed 3 years ago, Eleanor had become overly protective of anything that could shake the family's stability. She had abandoned her architectural dreams in Chicago to take care of him, assuming responsibilities that weren't hers. "Eleanor, when I was her age, I also needed the help of strangers to survive," he said softly. "Your mother always said that our duty was to repay the kindness we receive." "My mother is no longer here to give advice," Eleanor replied, more harshly than she intended. She immediately regretted it, seeing the pain flash across her father's eyes. Outside the study, Iris cautiously explored the house. It was bigger than any place she had ever lived, with shiny furniture and pleasant smells that made her feel like she was in a fantasy. She stopped in front of a photograph in the living room, a beautiful woman with a gentle smile next to Richard and a younger Eleanor. "That was my mom," Eleanor said, appearing behind her. "Carmen. She was pretty," Iris commented. "Where is she?" "She is gone. 3 years ago." Iris nodded with an understanding that surprised Eleanor. "My mom is gone too, but she said she'd be back." "And you believe her?" "I want to believe her," Iris admitted, gently touching the glass of the photograph. "But she left all my things behind, even my teddy bear." The girl's sincerity touched something deep within Eleanor. For the first time, she saw beyond the inconvenience of the situation and perceived the real child, intelligent, resilient, but deeply hurt. "Where have you been sleeping?" Eleanor asked, sitting next to her on the sofa. "There's an abandoned studio apartment on Hope Street. The door doesn't close properly, but there's an old mattress." "It's not so bad," Iris said, trying to sound brave. And aren't you afraid to be alone? I'm very afraid, Iris confessed, her voice getting smaller. But there's no one else. Only Mrs. Johnson sometimes gives me food, but she's poor too. Eleanor felt a tightness in her chest. Imagining a 6-year-old child facing loneliness and abandonment every night made her rethink her initial resistance. Iris, would you like to stay here today? We have a guest room, she offered, surprised by her own words. Iris's eyes lit up, but soon darkened again. I have no way to pay, and you hardly know me. Sometimes people help without expecting anything in return, Eleanor repeated her father's words. Later, while preparing a bath for Iris, Eleanor reflected on the sudden changes in her perfectly organized life. She had spent the last 3 years building routines that kept the pain of loss under control. The girl's presence threatened that carefully maintained balance. When Iris came out of the bathroom wearing borrowed pajamas, too big for her thin body, Eleanor was shocked by the transformation. Clean and with her hair combed, the girl revealed a delicate beauty, but also scars that told stories of deprivation. "Are you all right?" Eleanor asked, noting how Iris watched everything around her with contained fascination. "It's the first time in a long time that I've felt really clean," Iris admitted. "Thank you." During dinner, Richard watched the two interacting. With growing relief, Eleanor, initially tense, was beginning to relax in the girl's presence. Iris, in turn, demonstrated impressive manners and maturity. "Iris, do you go to school?" Richard asked. "Not officially," she replied, blushing. "But sometimes I stand outside Santos Dumont Elementary School and listen to the lessons through the window. The teacher speaks loudly. Do you like studying?" "I like it a lot, especially math. Numbers make sense. They don't lie or disappear." Eleanor was interested. "What kind of math do you know?" "I know how to add, subtract, multiply, and some division. I learned by watching the boys do their homework." "What if I give you a harder problem?" Eleanor challenged, grabbing a piece of paper. She wrote, "If a store sells 15 bolts of fabric per day and each bolt costs $12, how much does it earn in a week?" Iris studied the problem for a few moments, doing mental calculations. 15 times 12 is $180 per day. In a week there are 7 days, so $180 times 7, $1,260. Eleanor and Richard exchanged surprised glances. The answer was correct, and the girl had done all the calculations in her head. "How did you learn this?" Eleanor asked, impressed. "When you have nothing to do, you think a lot. And I like to imagine problems and solve them," Iris explained simply. That night, Richard stayed up late in his study, thinking about the dinner conversation. Iris's natural intelligence had awakened memories of his own childhood, when education was an impossible luxury. He remembered the hunger, the cold, the feeling of being invisible to the world. His compulsive generosity, a characteristic that Eleanor always criticized, was manifesting itself again. But this time, he felt it wasn't just impulse. It was recognition, connection with something deeply personal. From the guest room came muffled sounds. Iris was crying softly, trying not to make noise. Richard went upstairs and found the door ajar. The girl was curled up in bed, hugging the pillow. "Is everything all right?" he asked gently. "Sorry for making noise," she murmured. It's been a long time since I've slept in a real bed. I couldn't believe it was real." Richard sat on the edge of the bed. "Iris, would you like to stay here for a few more days until we decide what's best for you?" "Would you do that?" she asked, her eyes shining with cautious hope. "We will," he promised, without consulting Eleanor first. But in the hallway, Eleanor had heard the entire conversation. Leaning against the wall, she struggled with conflicting emotions, irritation at her father's unilateral decision, but also a strange satisfaction at seeing how Iris responded to kindness. What she didn't yet know was that a few miles away, Someone had noticed Iris's disappearance from the streets, and that person would soon appear, bringing with them revelations that would shake everything the Davenport family thought they knew about the girl they had just taken in. The next morning, Iris woke up to the aroma of fresh coffee and toast, smells that had long been absent from her reality. She went downstairs silently, finding Eleanor in the kitchen preparing breakfast. "Good morning," Iris said timidly. "Good. Morning. Did you sleep well?" "Better than in months," the girl admitted, sitting at the table. "Can I help with anything?" Eleanor stopped what she was doing, surprised. "You don't have to work here, Iris. You're our guest." "I always helped when someone gave me food," Iris explained. "Mrs. Johnson taught me that you always repay kindness, even when you don't have much to give." The girl's moral simplicity touched Eleanor deeply. "Tell me about Mrs. Johnson." "She sells lunchboxes in the central square. She's 71 years old and lives alone in a small house. Sometimes, when there was food left over, she would call me to eat," Iris recounted, her eyes lighting up. "She taught me to read the clock and some words. She said that every girl needs to know how to read so that she doesn't get cheated by others. She seems like a special person. She's the kindest person I know. When my mom left, it was Mrs. Johnson who showed me where to find the abandoned studio apartment. She said it was better than sleeping on the street." Richard appeared in the kitchen wearing an impeccable suit, ready for another day at the factory. He stopped when he saw Iris helping Eleanor set the table, a domestic scene he hadn't witnessed in a long time. "How are you feeling today, Iris?" he asked. "Very well, Mr. Davenport. Thank you for letting me stay." "Today I'm taking you to a doctor for a checkup," he announced, ignoring Eleanor's surprised look. "Afterwards, if you'd like, we can stop by the square so you can see Mrs. Johnson." Iris's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Can I really?" "Of course. I'm sure she's worried about you." After Richard left for work, Eleanor was alone with Iris for the first time. The girl explored the house with respectful curiosity, touching the objects delicately as if they were fragile treasures. "Iris, can I ask you a personal question?" Eleanor said, finding her in the library looking at the books. "You can." "Are you afraid that your mom won't come back?" Iris was silent for a long moment, running her fingers along the spines of the books. "At first I was sure she was coming back. I counted the days, slept with her note under my pillow. And now I think she doesn't want to come back. The note just said, 'I'm going to take care of some things, be right back.' But she took all her clothes, even the ones I like to see her wear the most," Iris confessed, her voice becoming choked with emotion. "And she took our only picture together." Eleanor felt her heart clench. "Do you remember what it was like before she left?" "She became very different in the last few months. She would go out at night and come back in the morning. Sometimes she brought strange men home. They drank a lot and made noise," Iris recalled, hugging a book against her chest. "One day she told me that I was a burden, that she could have a better life if she didn't have to take care of me." "Iris, you know that's not true, right? Children are never a burden." "Mrs. Johnson said the same thing, but if it's not true, why did she leave?" Eleanor had no answer to that question. How to explain to a 6-year-old child the complexities of abandonment, irresponsibility, the failure to love unconditionally? "Sometimes adults make bad choices," she said finally, "but that's not the children's fault. Never." That afternoon, when Richard returned from work, he found Iris sitting in the garden, drawing on a piece of paper that Eleanor had given her. The drawing showed a small house with 2 figures in the doorway, an elderly woman and a little girl. "Is that you and Mrs. Johnson?" he asked, sitting next to her on the grass. "It is. I drew our first conversation. She asked me if I was hungry, and when I said yes, she took me to her food stand and gave me a plate full of food," Iris said. "It was the first time in days that anyone had been kind to me." "Shall we visit her now?" The walk to the central square was revealing for Richard. Iris knew every street, every shortcut, every place where she had slept or sought shelter. She greeted people with naturalness, the baker who sometimes gave her old bread, the newsstand vendor who let her read the headlines, children from other poor families who recognized in her a fellow fighter. "Iris!" a familiar voice shouted when they arrived at the square. Mrs. Johnson was behind her food stand, her eyes shining with relief at seeing the girl. She was a small, chubby lady with grey hair tied in a bun and simple but clean clothes. "My girl, where have you been? I've been looking for you for 3 days," she said, hugging Iris tightly. "Mrs. Johnson, this is Mr. Davenport. He helped me when I fainted in front of Walter's store," Iris explained. Mrs. Johnson studied Richard with experienced eyes, assessing his intentions. "I've heard of you. You own the furniture factory." "I do. Iris is staying at our house temporarily," Richard explained. "Temporarily? Until we find a definitive solution to her situation." Mrs. Johnson nodded slowly. "Can I talk to you in private?" While Iris played with some children nearby, Mrs. Johnson pulled Richard aside. "Mr. Davenport, I've known this girl for 2 years. I've seen her grow up. I've seen what her mother did to her," the lady said in a low but firm voice. "Celeste isn't a bad person, but she's lost. Very lost." "What do you mean?" "She's always had trouble with men. Since she arrived here with baby Iris, I've seen her with a dozen different boyfriends, always looking for someone to solve her life," Mrs. Johnson said. "In recent months, she's been talking about fixing the situation, about finding a way out. I was afraid of what that meant. And now I'm seeing Iris smiling for the first time in months. She's clean, well-fed, safe," Mrs. Johnson observed. "But I know Celeste. If she finds out that her daughter is in a rich house, she'll show up, and it won't be for the right reasons." Richard felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you trying to tell me?" "I'm saying that you may be getting into a more complicated situation than you imagine. Celeste has a way of using people, especially men with good hearts," Mrs. Johnson warned. "And there's something else you need to know." "What?" "In the last days before she disappeared, she was hanging out with a new man, younger, well-dressed, different from the others, and he asked a lot of questions about the rich families in town. When they returned home that night, Iris was radiant for having seen Mrs. Johnson, but Richard carried in his chest a growing weight of worry. The elderly lady's words echoed in his mind, mixing with his determination to protect the girl. Eleanor noticed the change in her father's mood during dinner. "Did something happen at the square?" "We'll talk later," he said, looking discreetly at Iris, who was eating with a healthy appetite. Later, when Iris went upstairs to take her bath, Richard told his daughter about the conversation with Mrs. Johnson. "Dad, this changes everything," Eleanor said, visibly worried. "If her mother comes back with ulterior motives—" "It changes nothing," Richard interrupted firmly. "Iris needs protection, no matter from whom." "But what if Mrs. Johnson is right? What if people show up wanting to take advantage of the situation?" Before Richard could answer, the doorbell rang. It was 8 o'clock at night, an unusual time for visitors. The two exchanged glances, a bad feeling taking over the atmosphere. Richard went to the door, peeked through the window, and froze. On the porch was a young woman with blonde hair, accompanied by a well-dressed man he didn't recognize. Even without ever having seen a picture, he knew immediately who it was. Celeste had returned. Richard took a deep breath before opening the door. Celeste was standing on the porch, thinner than he had imagined, with blue eyes that seemed to calculate every detail of the mansion in front of her. She wore simple but clean clothes, and there was something in her posture that suggested poorly disguised nervousness. "Good evening," she said in a soft voice. "My name is Celeste, and this is my daughter Iris. I heard that you found her." The man next to her stepped forward, extending his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Fabio Meneses, nice to meet you. I'm a friend of Celeste's. Richard shook his hand cautiously, noting how Fabio discreetly assessed the interior of the house. Please, come in. The moment Celeste crossed the door, Iris appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing the borrowed pajamas. The encounter between mother and daughter was electric in its silent tension. Iris descended the steps slowly, her large eyes fixed on the face of the woman who had abandoned her. Iris, my daughter, Celeste said, opening her arms. Mommy's back. The girl stopped 10 feet away, her expression a mixture of confusion and hurt. You said you'd be right back. I know, sweetheart. I had to take care of some important things. But now I'm here. Eleanor watched the scene from the living room, feeling her heart clench as she saw Iris's internal struggle. The girl wanted to run into her mother's arms, but something kept her cautious. Where were you? Iris asked, her voice almost a whisper. In New York, darling. Trying to find a better job, a better place for us to live, Celeste explained, approaching slowly. And I met Uncle Fabio, who's going to help us. Fabio smiled at Iris with a cordiality that seemed rehearsed. Your mum talked a lot about you, Iris. It must have been hard to be alone all this time. I wasn't alone, Iris replied, looking at Richard and Eleanor. They took care of me. And we are very grateful for that, Celeste said, addressing Richard. I don't know how to thank you for taking care of my daughter. You don't have to, Richard replied, studying Celeste carefully. Any decent person would do the same. Fabio spoke up. Actually, we'd like to talk about Iris's situation. Maybe we can sit down. In the living room, a palpable tension took over the atmosphere. Celeste sat on the sofa, waiting for Iris to come to her side, but the girl remained standing close to Eleanor. Celeste, Richard began, Iris told me that you left a note saying you'd be right back. That was 2 months ago. I know it seems like a long time, but things got complicated, she explained, avoiding her daughter's direct gaze. I needed to stay longer than I expected. Mommy, Iris interrupted, you took all your clothes and our picture. The silence that followed was awkward. Celeste blushed slightly, clearly not expecting her daughter to have noticed these details. I needed to take some things with me, she stammered. Why didn't you take me with you? Iris asked, her voice beginning to tremble. Because there was no place for you where I was going to stay, Celeste replied, the irritation beginning to appear in her voice. You don't understand, Iris. Sometimes adults need to do difficult things. Fabio intervened quickly. What Celeste means is that she was preparing a better future for you both. Eleanor couldn't contain herself. Preparing a future by leaving a 6-year-old child alone for 2 months? Look, I don't need to justify myself to you, Celeste said, her mask of kindness beginning to slip. Iris is my daughter, and I know what's best for her. Do you really? Richard asked, his voice low but full of authority. Because when I found her, she was fainting from hunger in the street. That's none of your business. It became our business when we decided to take care of her, Eleanor retorted. Fabio stood up, trying to calm things down. Guys, let's take it easy. We're all on the same side here. We want what's best for Iris. And what do you think is best? Richard asked suspiciously. Fabio exchanged a look with Celeste before answering. Well, it's obvious that you've become fond of the girl, and she seems to be well taken care of here. Where are you going with this? Maybe we could reach an agreement that benefits everyone, Fabio suggested. Iris would continue to live here, receiving quality education and care, while Celeste could visit her regularly. Richard frowned. And what would be the benefit for Celeste in this agreement? Well, obviously you'd have to help with the child's costs, Fabio said, finally revealing his intentions. Celeste would have to give up having her daughter at home. Fair compensation would be in order. The atmosphere turned icy. Eleanor stood up abruptly. "Are you trying to sell Iris?" "It's not that," Celeste protested. "It's just that I can't afford to take care of her properly. You have money. You can give her things that I never could." "Like love and presents?" Eleanor asked sarcastically. "I love my daughter." "Funny way to show love," Richard muttered. Iris, who had been silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. "Mommy, do you want to sell me?" "It's not selling, sweetheart," Celeste said, trying to control herself. It's making sure you have a better life." "But I want to stay with you," Iris said, tears beginning to run down her face. "I waited for you to come back every day. And I came back, but just look at how well you are here. Nice clothes, good food, a big house." "I don't want a big house," Iris sobbed. "I want my mom." Celeste stood up and went to her daughter, kneeling in front of her. "Iris, Mommy can't give you those things, but they can. Do you want to go? Back to starving? Do you want to go back to sleeping in that cold studio apartment? If it's with you, yes." Iris's simple and sincere answer left all the adults in silence. Celeste closed her eyes, fighting against something that seemed bigger than her. "My daughter, you don't understand. Mommy can't take care of you the way you deserve." "Why not?" Because I'm not good at it," Celeste admitted, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to be a good mother." Fabio approached, placing his hand on Celeste's shoulder. "What we're proposing is the best for everyone. Iris stays in a stable environment. Celeste can rebuild her life. And you," he said, looking at Richard and Eleanor, "can have the daughter you always wanted." "We don't want to buy a child," Richard said firmly. "If Iris stays with us, it will be out of love, not money. But you can help Celeste get established, can't you?" Fabio insisted. "A small amount for her to start a new life." Eleanor looked at the man with contempt. "You're the one behind this, aren't you? You convinced her to come back for her daughter." "I'm just trying to help," Fabio defended himself. "Help whom? Iris or your pocket?" At that moment, Iris broke, away from Celeste, and ran to Richard, hugging his legs. "Mr. Davenport, I don't want to leave. Please don't let me go." Richard picked the girl up in his arms, feeling his heart break as he saw her despair. "No one is going to force you to go anywhere, Iris. She's a minor," Fabio said, his tone becoming more threatening. "The mother has legal rights over her." "And we have lawyers," Richard replied. "If necessary, we'll fight for her custody in court." Celeste stood up, her emotions finally exploding. "You think you're better than me? That you can just take my daughter?" "We never said that," Eleanor replied. "But a mother who abandons her daughter for 2 months and comes back trying to sell her—" "I'm not selling! Then what are you doing?" Celeste looked at Iris, who was clinging to Richard as if her life depended on it, and something in her face hardened. "All right. If that's how you want to play, then let's play." She headed for the door, followed by Fabio. "You're going to hear from my lawyers? No one's going to keep my daughter." After the door closed, silence filled the house. Iris cried softly in Richard's arms, while Eleanor paced back and forth, visibly agitated. "Dad, what are we going to do?" she asked. "We're going to protect Iris," he replied, his voice full of determination, "whatever it takes." But neither of them knew that the battle that had just begun would reveal secrets that would forever change their perceptions about Celeste, Fabio, and the dark past that connected them. In the days following the confrontation with Celeste, the atmosphere in the Davenport house was charged with tension. Iris was visibly shaken, eating little and waking up several times during the night with nightmares. Richard hired a lawyer specializing in family law, while Eleanor, driven by a fierce protectiveness that surprised her, decided to investigate Celeste's past on her own. "Dad, I need to tell you something," Eleanor said one morning after Iris went out to play in the garden. "I've spent the last 3 days doing some research." "What kind of research?" "About Celeste and Fabio, and what I found is disturbing." Richard closed the newspaper, giving his daughter his full attention. "What did you find?" "Celeste isn't her real name. It's Clarice Ferreira, and she has a troubling history," Eleanor revealed, spreading some papers on the table. "I found marriage records in 3 different cities in upstate New York, always with older men with some financial means." "Marriages?" "Yes, and in all cases, she disappeared after a few months, always taking some money or assets from the husband," Eleanor continued. "Dad, there's something worse. She abandoned 2 children before Iris, a 5-year-old boy in Albany and a 4-year-old girl in Rochester." Richard felt his blood run cold. "Are you sure about this?" "I spoke with a social worker from Albany, who knows the case. The boy has been in a foster family for 3 years. The social worker said that Clarice, Celeste, simply disappeared one night, leaving the child alone in the apartment." "My God," Richard murmured, running a hand over his face. "And Fabio?" "About him I found even less, but what little I found isn't good. There are records of involvement in document forgery schemes in Syracuse. Nothing proven, but several suspicions." At that moment, Iris ran into the house, holding a flower she had picked in the garden. "Look what I found! It's for you," she said, offering the flower with a shy smile. Richard and Eleanor exchanged meaningful glances. How to tell a 6-year-old child that her mother had a history of abandoning children. How to protect her from this devastating truth. "It's beautiful, Iris," Eleanor said, quickly putting away the papers. "How about we put it in a little vase?" While Iris was occupied with the flower, Richard pulled Eleanor into the study. "We can't tell her this," he said in a low voice. "I know, but Dad, this changes everything. If Celeste has a pattern of abandoning children, Iris will never be safe with her. What if she comes back with a court order? Then we use this information. No judge would give custody to a woman with this history," Eleanor replied. "But there's something else. I need to tell you about a conversation I had with Mrs. Johnson yesterday." "What did she say?" "That Celeste was acting very strange in the weeks before she disappeared. She talked about pulling off a big score, about finding someone who would solve all her problems. Mrs. Johnson thinks Celeste planned Iris's abandonment." Richard sat heavily in the chair. "Planned how?" "By leaving Iris in a desperate situation, hoping that someone would take pity. Someone with money," Eleanor explained. "Dad, what if all this is a plan? The abandonment, the return, the proposed agreement. You're suggesting that Celeste used her own daughter as bait. I'm suggesting that maybe Mrs. Johnson is right. Celeste knows the city well. She knows who has money and who has a good heart. She may have calculated that someone like you would save Iris." The possibility was so horrible that Richard refused to believe it. But the evidence was piling up, painting a dark picture of the woman he had tried to see as a desperate mother. That afternoon, while Iris was doing the homework that Eleanor had prepared for her, Walter Harrison appeared at the door. The shopkeeper was visibly nervous, twisting his hat in his hands. "Mr. Davenport, I need to talk to you," he said, avoiding eye contact. "About what?" "About the girl. About what happened the day you found her." Richard invited him in, intrigued. Walter sat on the edge of the chair as if he were ready to run away. "Mr. Davenport, I haven't slept well since that day. What I did was unforgivable," he began, "but there's something I need to tell you." "I'm listening." "The girl's mother. I saw her a few days before the fainting. She was watching her daughter. From afar, hidden behind my truck, Richard leaned forward, watching how, like someone studying something. She stayed there for more than an hour, just watching as the girl walked down the street, begging for food. And when someone tried to help Iris, the mother sneaked away. How many times did you see this? 3 times on different days. Always. The same behavior. She was calculating something. Walter's revelation confirmed Eleanor's worst suspicions. Celeste hadn't abandoned Iris out of desperation. She had orchestrated a situation for someone to save her. "Why are you telling me this now?" Richard asked. "Because since the mother came back, I've been seeing her and that man hanging around your house. They stay across the street, watching, planning something," Walter revealed. "And also because I can't get the girl's face out of my head when I kicked her. She didn't react like a normal child would. She cowered as if she was already used to being beaten." Richard felt a growing fury taking over his chest. The idea that Iris had been not only abandoned, but possibly mistreated awakened in him an anger he hadn't felt in a long time. "Walter, are you sure about what you're telling me?" "I am, sir. And there's one more thing. The man who's with her, I've seen him before. Not in Willow Creek, but at a fair in Binghamton about 2 years ago. He was selling fake documents to farm workers." After Walter left, Richard felt like he was seeing Celeste for the first time. She wasn't a desperate mother who had made a terrible mistake. She was a calculating manipulator who had used her own daughter as a pawn in a sordid game. That night, during dinner, Iris asked a question that caught both adults off guard. "Do you think my mum really loves me?" Richard and Eleanor looked at each other, not knowing how to answer. "Why are you asking that, honey?" Eleanor said gently. "Because when she was here, she didn't look me in the eyes even once. And when I said I wanted to stay with her, she got annoyed, like I had said something wrong." Iris's perception was devastatingly accurate. Even at 6 years old, she had grasped what the adults were trying to ignore, that Celeste didn't demonstrate genuine love for her. "Iris," Richard said carefully, "sometimes people have difficulty showing love, even when they feel it. But you don't have difficulty," she observed. "You hug me, take care of me, get worried when I'm sad. My mom never did that." The silence that followed was filled with a painful truth that no one wanted to utter. "Iris," Eleanor said finally, "you know that we love you very much, don't you?" "I do, and I love you too," she replied, a shy smile appearing on her face. "You're my real family." That night, after Iris fell asleep, Richard and Eleanor stayed on the porch, talking about the next steps. "Dad, we can't let Celeste take Iris," Eleanor said. "Not after what we found out." "We won't let her," Richard promised, "but we need to be prepared for a complicated legal battle." "What if they try something more drastic?" "Like what?" "I don't know. But people like Fabio don't give up easily when there's money involved." As if her words had prophetic power, the phone rang at that moment. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" Richard answered. "Mr. Davenport, this is Fabio. I think we need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "Oh, but we do, especially about certain irregularities in your company that have come to my attention." Richard felt his blood run cold. "What irregularities?" "Problems with labor documentation, tax, evasion, things that would be of great interest to the IRS," Fabio said with a tone of satisfaction. "But we can resolve all this in a friendly conversation." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering a solution that benefits everyone. You pay a reasonable amount, Celeste gives up her daughter, and certain information never reaches the competent authorities." Richard hung up the phone, his hands trembling with anger. The situation had escalated to pure and simple blackmail. Fabio wasn't just interested in money. He was prepared to destroy everything Richard had built to get what he wanted. And the worst of all was that while the adults played their sordid games, a 6-year-old girl slept in the room upstairs, unaware that her life was being negotiated like a commodity. Fabio's threat echoed in Richard's mind throughout the night. He knew his company well and knew that, although some bureaucratic issues might be overdue, there was nothing criminal in his business. But he also knew that men like Fabio were experts in turning small irregularities into big problems. The next morning, while Iris was playing in the garden, Richard called his accountant and lawyer, requesting an urgent, complete audit of all company documents. He couldn't allow blackmail to prevent him from protecting the girl. "Dad, are you all right?" Eleanor asked, noticing the deep circles under his eyes. "Did you sleep tonight?" "Little. Fabio called me yesterday after you went upstairs," Richard said, recounting the conversation. "Blackmail." Eleanor turned pale. "Dad, that's a crime." "I know, but he's too smart to leave evidence. It was all very vague, very implied." "What now?" "Now we protect Iris and investigate these two further," Richard replied, watching the girl who was drawing, sitting on the grass. "And you're right about one thing. We need to be prepared for any eventuality." That afternoon, Mrs. Johnson appeared at the Davenport house for the first time. The lady was visibly worried, carrying a small handbag. "Mr. Davenport, I need to speak with you urgently," she said when Eleanor greeted her at the door. "Has something happened, Mrs. Johnson?" "It has, and it's serious." When they sat in the living room, Mrs. Johnson revealed information that left everyone alarmed. "Celeste and that man were at my house last night. They wanted me to lie about Iris." "What kind of lie?" Richard asked. "They wanted me to say that Iris was a violent child, that she hit the other children, that she had psychological problems," Mrs. Johnson said indignantly. "They offered me money to sign a paper saying these lies." Eleanor stood up abruptly. "They're trying to build a case against our ability to care for her." "It's worse than that," Mrs. Johnson continued. "When I refused, they became threatening, that Fabio said that I was an old woman who didn't know what was good for me." "That's why you brought the bag?" "Yes. I don't feel safe in my house," the lady admitted. "I know it's a lot to ask, but—" "Of course you can stay here," Richard interrupted. "We have plenty of rooms, and Iris will be happy to have you around." And then, when Iris found out that Mrs. Johnson was going to stay in the house, her joy was contagious. It was as if an important piece of her former life, the only source of affection she had known on the streets, was now part of her new family. "Mrs. Johnson, are you going to live here?" she asked, hugging the lady tightly. "For a few days, my dear, just until things calm down." "What things?" The adults exchanged glances. Iris was becoming more perceptive, asking questions that revealed her growing awareness that something serious was happening. "Adult things, honey," Mrs. Johnson replied gently. "Nothing you need to worry about." But Iris was no longer the naive child who had arrived there weeks ago. Living with Richard and Eleanor, coupled with the education she was receiving, had awakened in her an acute intelligence to read situations. "It's about my mom, isn't it?" she asked directly. "She wants to take me away, and you don't want to let her." The awkward silence confirmed her suspicions. "Iris," Eleanor said, kneeling in front of her, "what would you like to happen?" "I'd like my mom to really love me," she replied with devastating simplicity. "But I already understand that that's not going to happen." "Why do you say that?" "Because mothers who love their children don't leave them alone for 2 months, and they don't come back only when they find out that someone rich is taking care of them." Iris's perception left all the adults speechless. How could a 6-year-old child see so clearly what the adults were trying to hide? "I want to stay with you," she continued. "You're my real family. Mrs. Johnson can confirm you take care of me like real parents do." "I can confirm it," Mrs. Johnson said, tears in her eyes. "This girl has never been as happy as she is here." That night, after Iris and Mrs. Johnson went to sleep, an unexpected visit arrived. It was a well-dressed man in his 40s who introduced himself as Dr. August Silver, lawyer. "I was hired by Mrs. Celeste Santos to deal with the issue of custody of her minor daughter," he said formally. "Come in," Richard said, already expecting this moment. In the living room, Dr. Silver presented a court petition requesting the immediate return of Iris to her biological mother. "My clients allege that the child has been kept here against the mother's will, and that you are preventing contact between them," the lawyer explained. "That's a lie," Eleanor retorted. "Celeste abandoned her daughter for 2 months. According to my client, she was resolving important personal matters and left the child in the care of trusted neighbors." "What neighbors?" Richard asked. "The girl was living alone in an abandoned studio apartment." "That's not the version my client presented," Dr. Silver said, consulting his papers. "And we have a witness who confirms that the child has exhibited violent and maladjusted behavior since she's been in your care." Richard and Eleanor exchanged glances. It was obvious that they had found someone willing to lie for money since Mrs. Johnson had refused. "Doctor," Richard said, controlling himself, "this child arrived here malnourished, traumatized, and in deplorable condition. In a few weeks she has transformed into a happy, healthy, and well-mannered girl. Any impartial person can see that. My clients dispute that version of events. And we have evidence that Celeste is not a suitable mother," Eleanor revealed, "including records of other children abandoned by her." Dr. Silver seemed surprised for a moment, but quickly recovered. "I don't know what evidence you're talking about, but I suggest we resolve this in a civilized manner." "How?" "My client is willing to accept a financial agreement that would allow the child to continue living here upon monthly payment of a sum to the biological mother." It was the same proposal that Fabio had made, but now with a legal guise. "And if we refuse?" Richard asked. "Then we will take the case to court. And I can tell you in advance that we have evidence of irregularities in your professional life that may complicate your situation before a judge." The threat was clear. Fabio had gotten a lawyer to give legitimacy to his blackmail. "Doctor, I need time to consult my attorney," Richard said. "Naturally, but not much time. My client is eager to have her daughter back." After the lawyer left, Richard and Eleanor felt cornered. It was a battle that seemed impossible to win without devastating consequences. "Dad, they're more organized than we thought," Eleanor said. "They're criminals disguised as victims," Richard replied. "But we won't give up. What if they find out we're investigating Celeste's past? Then we'll have to act faster than them." At that moment, Mrs. Johnson came downstairs carrying a yellowed envelope. "Mr. Davenport, I think it's time for me to tell a truth that I've kept for a long time," she said with a grave expression. "What truth?" "About Iris's father, and about why Celeste really came to Willow Creek." She handed the envelope to Richard. "This here can change everything." When Richard opened the envelope and saw the contents, his expression changed completely. What was there revealed a connection between his past and Celeste's that no one could have imagined. "My God," he whispered, "this really changes everything." Eleanor tried to see what was in the envelope, but at that moment they heard footsteps upstairs. Iris had woken up and was coming to see what was happening. The truth that Mrs. Johnson had kept for years was about to come to light, and with it a twist that no one expected. Before Mrs. Johnson could reveal the contents of the envelope, Iris appeared on the stairs, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Are you talking about important things?" "Go back to bed, honey," Mrs. Johnson said gently. "We'll talk tomorrow." "Okay," Iris agreed, but before going up, she stopped and looked at Richard. "Mr. Davenport, are you going to let them take me away?" The girl's direct and vulnerable question broke the hearts of everyone present. "Never," Richard promised, his voice full of emotion. "You're part of our family now." Iris smiled and went upstairs. Only when they heard the bedroom door close did Mrs. Johnson continue. "What's in this envelope may seem impossible to believe," she began, her hands trembling slightly. "But I swear by the memory of my late husband that it's the pure truth." Richard opened the envelope completely and took out a birth certificate, yellowed with time. His eyes widened as he read the names of the parents. "Father of Iris, Joachim Richard Davenport," he read aloud, his voice getting weaker and weaker. "Mother, Clarice Ferreira Santos." "Joachim Richard Davenport." Eleanor repeated, confused. "Dad, that's your father's name." Richard looked at Mrs. Johnson with an expression of complete disbelief. "That's impossible. My father died when I was 17 years old." "He didn't die, son," Mrs. Johnson said softly. "Your father faked his own death to escape debts he incurred trying to help needy families. He changed his name and went to live in Albany." "You're saying that needy—" "I'm saying that Iris is your half-sister," Mrs. Johnson revealed. "Joachim met Clarice in Albany 7 years ago. She was young, beautiful, and he was lonely. Iris was born from that relationship." Eleanor sat heavily on the sofa, trying to process the information. "So, Celeste, Clarice, she knew from the beginning who the father was. She knew. And when Joachim really died 2 years ago, she decided to come to Willow Creek to look for his family. But not to ask for help, to run a scam." Richard was in complete shock. "How do you know all this?" "Because Joachim came to me when he found out he was sick. He wanted me to give this to you if something happened to him," Mrs. Johnson explained, taking a letter from the envelope. "He deeply regretted faking his own death, and he wanted you to know the truth about Iris." The letter was written in the handwriting that Richard knew well, the same that had taught him to write as a child. "My dear son Richard," he read, his voice choked with emotion. "If you are reading this letter, it is because I have really departed this time. I know I hurt you deeply when I faked my death, but I saw no other way out. The debts I incurred trying to help others threatened everything we built together." Richard stopped reading, tears running down his face. Eleanor approached and continued reading aloud. "During these years away from you, I met a woman named Clarice. She gave me a daughter, Iris, who is your half-sister. But Clarice is not a good person, son. She has serious problems and a history of abandoning children. I fear for Iris's future. When I'm no longer here to protect her," the letter continued, "I ask that, if something happens to me, you find Iris and protect her. She is innocent of her mother's wickedness, and please forgive me for the years I missed with you. You have always been my greatest pride." The silence that followed was broken only by Richard's sobs. Everything made sense now. His immediate connection with Iris, the feeling that he knew her from somewhere, the way she reminded him of himself in childhood. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he asked Mrs. Johnson. "Because Joachim asked me to only tell if Iris was in real danger, and because it wasn't my story to tell," she replied. "But now, with Clarice trying to use the girl to get money, I thought it was time." Eleanor approached her father. "Dad, this changes everything. Iris is your sister. She has a legal right to stay with us. But it also means that Clarice can claim she chose Richard as guardian because she knew the family connection," Mrs. Johnson observed. "She's smart. She can use that to her advantage." "How so?" "She can say that she always knew Richard was Iris's brother, and that's why she left the girl where he could find her, turned the abandonment into a family protection plan." The complexity of the situation was becoming even more evident. Clarice not only had a history of manipulation, she had orchestrated the whole scenario, knowing exactly who Richard was. "There's one more thing," Mrs. Johnson said, taking another paper from the envelope. Joachim left a will. He left a small amount to Iris, but with a specific condition. What condition? That the money can only be used for the girl's education and care, and that Clarice can never have access to it. The will names you, Richard, as executor. How much money? It's not a fortune, but it's $50,000. Joachim saved penny by penny to leave for his daughter. Richard looked at the document, recognizing Joachim's paternal concern even after death. His father had tried to protect Iris from her own mother. Mrs. Johnson, Eleanor said, does Clarice know about the will? No. Joachim asked me for absolute secrecy. He feared that if Clarice knew, she would try something against Iris to get the money. At that moment the phone rang. It was almost midnight, an odd time for calls. Richard answered cautiously. Richard, this is Dr. August Silva. I'm sorry to call so late, but we have an urgent situation. What situation? My client, Celeste, was arrested an hour ago. Document forgery and fraud. She is being accused of scams in other cities. Richard was silent, processing the information. Doctor, what does this mean for Iris's case? It means that the situation has become very complicated. Celeste is asking to speak with you urgently. She says she has important information about the child. What kind of information? She didn't want to say over the phone, but she insists it's something that will completely change your perspective on the whole situation. Richard looked at Eleanor and Mrs. Johnson, who were listening to the conversation with tense expressions. Where is she? At the central precinct. She can receive visitors until 6 in the morning. I'm going to talk to her. Mr. Davenport, I don't advise that without the presence of a lawyer. I can take care of myself, Doctor. After hanging up, Richard prepared to leave. Dad, don't go alone, Eleanor said. I'm going. I want to hear what she has to say. What if it's a trap? Then at least we'll know what it's about, Richard replied. But I have a feeling that Clarice is about to reveal something we haven't discovered yet. Mrs. Johnson stood up. Mr. Davenport, be careful. Clarice is capable of anything when she feels cornered. Rest assured and take care of Iris. As Richard prepared to leave, none of them noticed that Iris had woken up again and was listening to everything from the top of the stairs. The girl had heard enough to understand that her life was about to change again, and when she heard the name Joachim being mentioned, a flash of memory passed through her mind. She knew that name. Her mother had mentioned a Grandpa Joachim several times when she was younger. Iris silently descended the stairs, determined to discover the whole truth about her family, no matter how painful it was. Iris tiptoed down the stairs, her little heart beating fast in her chest. She had heard enough of the conversation to understand that her life was full of secrets that the adults were trying to hide from her. When she reached the living room, she found Eleanor and Mrs. Johnson talking in low voices. Grandpa Joachim, she murmured, making the two women turn around, startled. Iris, what are you doing up? Eleanor asked. I remembered something, the girl said, her big eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and fear. My mum talked about a Grandpa Joachim sometimes when she was drinking. She said that he was a good man, but that he had died and left her alone. Mrs. Johnson and Eleanor exchanged meaningful glances. Iris, honey, Mrs. Johnson said gently. What else do you remember about that? I remember that once she cried, and talking about him, she said that he liked me a lot, but that he couldn't see me because he lived far away. Iris recounted, sitting on the sofa between the two. And I remember that she had a picture of him, but she tore it up one of the times. She got angry. Do you remember what he looked like in the picture? Iris closed her eyes, concentrating. He was an older man, with grey hair. He smiled a lot. He seemed gentle, like Mr. Davenport. The tears that ran down Eleanor's face confirmed the girl's suspicions. He was my real grandfather, wasn't he? Iris asked with impressive maturity. Yes, honey, Mrs. Johnson admitted. Joachim was your grandfather, and that means that Richard is your older brother. Iris was silent for a long moment, processing this revolutionary information. That's why I felt at home here from the first day, she said finally. And that's why Mr. Davenport was so good to me. We're real family. We are, Eleanor confirmed, hugging the girl, and now you understand why we're going to fight so hard for you to stay with us. Did my mom know this? She knew, Mrs. Johnson replied, and that's why she came to Willow Creek. She knew that if something happened to you, Richard would take care of you. So she didn't abandon me by chance, Iris murmured, a new understanding shining in her eyes. She planned all this. The girl's insight continued to surprise the adults. At 6 years old, she could understand emotional nuances that many adults would ignore. Meanwhile, at the police station, Richard faced Celeste through the bars of the cell. She was visibly shaken, her hair disheveled, and her eyes red from crying so much. "Richard, thank you for coming," she said, clinging to the bars. "I need to tell you the truth about everything." "I'm listening." "First, I want you to know that I never wanted things to get to this point. Fabio, he convinced me that it would be easy to get money from you. And you agreed to use your own daughter as bait?" Celeste lowered her head. "I know it was horrible, but you don't understand. I've always been terrible at being a mother. Since Iris was born, I've felt like I was failing her every day." "That doesn't justify abandonment." "I know, but when Joachim died and told me about you, I thought it would be better for her. You have money, stability, you can give her everything I never could." Richard observed Celeste carefully, trying to discern how much of her confession was sincere and how much was manipulation. "Celeste, if you really thought it would be better for Iris, why didn't you come talk to me directly? Why all this staging?" "Because I knew you wouldn't believe me, an unknown woman appearing on your doorstep saying that our daughter is your sister. You'd think it was a scam." "And wasn't it?" Celeste was silent for a moment. "At first, yes. Fabio convinced me that we could get a good amount from you and then disappear. But when I saw how happy Iris was in your house, what changed? It changed that I realized that she had never been happy with me. Never. And that maybe for the first time in my life, I could do something really good for her. By leaving her with us? Yes. But Fabio didn't agree. He said that we could get a lot more money if we continued with the original plan. Richard approached the bars. "Celeste, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there something else I should know about Iris, about her past?" Celeste hesitated, her eyes revealing an intense internal conflict. "There is," she admitted finally, "but it's not about Iris. It's about me." "What about you?" "Richard, I didn't just abandon Iris. Before her, I had 2 other children, and I abandoned them too." The confession confirmed what Eleanor had discovered in her investigations. "Why?" Richard asked, trying to understand the mind of the woman in front of him. "Because I have a serious problem. The doctor said it's a disorder that prevents me from forming normal emotional bonds," Celeste explained, tears running down her face. "I love my children, but I don't know how to show that love, and when they really need me, I panic and run away. And Joachim knew this. He knew. He was the one who took me to a psychologist for the first time. But when he died, I stopped the treatment and went back to the old patterns." Richard felt a mixture of anger and compassion. Celeste wasn't simply a villain. She was a deeply ill woman who had caused terrible damage because of her inability to seek help. "Celeste, what do you want from me now?" "I want you to keep Iris, officially. I'll sign any paper, give up any right. Just promise that you'll take good care of her." "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely. For the first time in my life, I'm going to do something really good for one of my children. When Richard returned home, it was almost dawn. He found Iris awake in the living room, drawing in her notebook, while Eleanor and Mrs. Johnson dozed on the sofa. "You shouldn't be awake," he said gently. "I couldn't sleep," she replied, showing him the drawing. "I drew our real family now." The drawing showed 4 figures: an elderly man with a halo, Joachim, Richard, Eleanor, and Iris, all holding hands. On the side, separated by a line, was the figure of a woman alone, Celeste. "Why did you draw your mother separate?" Richard asked. "Because she chose to stay separate," Iris replied simply. "But it's okay. I have you now." "Iris, your mother. She's going to sign papers so you can stay with us forever. Are you sure that's what you want?" "I'm sure," she replied without hesitation. "I always knew she didn't really want me, but you want me, right? More than anything in the world. Then I choose you." 3 days later, on a sunny morning, the family was gathered at the courthouse to formalize Iris's adoption. Celeste was present, accompanied by a public defender, to sign the papers that would permanently transfer custody of her daughter to Richard. "Are you sure about this, Celeste?" the judge present asked. "I am, Your Honor. It's the best for my daughter." When all the documents were signed, Celeste approached Iris one last time. "Iris, I know I was a terrible mother," she said, kneeling in front of the girl. "But I want you to know that I always loved you, even though I didn't know how to show it." "I know, Mom," Iris replied, hugging Celeste. "And I love you too. But now I have a family that knows how to take care of me. Take care of yourself, my daughter, and be happy." When Celeste left the courthouse, she seemed to carry a lighter weight on her shoulders. For the first time in her life, she had done the right thing for one of her children. Outside, Fabio was waiting for her with a furious expression. "Have you completely lost your mind?" he shouted. "You just threw away a fortune." "I just saved my daughter," Celeste replied, with a firmness that surprised even herself. "What now? How are we going to get money?" "We're not going to get anything. It's over, Fabio. I'm going to get treated. I'm going to try to be a better person. You can't do this to me. I can, and I'm doing it. Find someone else for your scams." As Celeste walked away, leaving Fabio furious in the middle of the street, the Davenport family celebrated the official start of a new life. Iris now legally had what she had always known in her heart, a family that loved her unconditionally. But the story still held one last surprise, one that would connect all the dots definitively and reveal the true legacy that Joachim had left for his family. 2 weeks after the adoption was formalized, life in the Davenport house had found a new and harmonious rhythm. Iris had completely adapted to her new reality, calling Richard brother, with a naturalness that deeply touched his heart. Eleanor, who had initially resisted the girl's presence, now found herself completely in love with her adopted little sister. "Elle," Iris said one morning, using the affectionate nickname she had created for her sister-in-law. "Can you teach me to draw houses like you do?" "Of course, sweetie. Do you want to be an architect when you grow up?" "I want to build beautiful houses for children who have nowhere to live," Iris replied, with the touching simplicity that characterized her ambitions. Mrs. Johnson, who had officially become part of the family as a housekeeper and grandmother at heart, observed these interactions with deep satisfaction. She had spent her whole life taking care of other people, but she had never felt as needed and loved as in that home. That afternoon, when Richard returned from work, he found a surprise waiting for him. His lawyer, Dr. Charles Medina, was in the living room with a grave expression, accompanied by an elderly man he didn't recognize. "Richard, this is Mr. Benedict Oliveira, a retired notary from Albany," the lawyer introduced. "He brought important information about your father." The elderly man stood up with difficulty, leaning on a cane. "Mr. Davenport, I worked with your father in the last years of his life. He asked me to deliver this personally if something happened to him. Benedict handed over a sealed envelope, visibly old. Your father told me that this envelope should only be opened when you were taking care of Iris. He knew that one day this would happen. With trembling hands, Richard opened the envelope. Inside, there was a golden key and an address in Albany, along with a letter. My dear son, Richard read aloud, if you are reading this letter, it is because Iris has finally found her way to you. The key that is together with this letter opens a safe deposit box at the Central Bank of Albany. There you will find something I've kept for years, waiting for the right moment to pass on. Iris, who was playing in the garden, entered the room attracted by the adults' voices. Seeing the serious expression on Richard's face, she approached him instinctively. What's happening, brother? Your grandfather Joachim left something for us, Richard explained, showing her the key. We'll need to travel to Albany tomorrow. Can I go too? Of course you can. This story concerns you. Too. The next morning, the whole family made the trip to Albany. At the bank, when they opened the safe deposit box using Joachim's key, they found much more than they expected. In addition to documents and some jewelry that had belonged to Richard's mother, there was a leather-bound diary and a small velvet box. Joachim wrote everything here, Richard said, leafing through the diary. About the time he faked his death, about how he met Celeste, about Iris. What does he say about me? Iris asked, curious. Richard found a specific page and read, Iris is an extraordinary child. Even at only 3 years old, she demonstrates an intelligence and sensitivity that remind me of Richard at the same age. I know that Celeste cannot take care of her properly, and I fear for the future of this precious girl. My only hope is that, one day, my son will find his sister and can give her the love and stability that I could not offer. Iris approached Richard, who picked her up in his arms. He liked me a lot, didn't he? Loved you as much as I love you now, Richard replied. Moved, Eleanor opened the velvet box, revealing a delicate necklace with a bird-shaped pendant. There's an inscription, she said, for Iris, who always knew how to fly even with broken wings. Grandpa Joachim. Is it for me? Iris asked, her eyes shining. It's yours, Richard confirmed, placing the necklace on the girl's neck. Your grandfather wanted you to have something special from him, but the biggest surprise was on the last pages of the diary. Joachim had meticulously documented a plan that he had been developing for years. Richard, Eleanor read one of the last entries. I leave to you not only my daughter, but also a dream that I never managed to realize. Use the money that is deposited in the attached account to create a foundation that helps abandoned children. Call it the Iris Foundation, in honor of the girl who taught me that love can flourish even in the most difficult circumstances. A foundation? Richard murmured, checking the bank documents. He left $200,000 for this. Brother, said Iris, who had heard everything attentively, did Grandpa want to help children like me? Exactly like you. So we can do that? Help other children who are alone? Richard looked at Eleanor, who nodded with a smile. We can, sweetie. We're going to fulfill Grandpa Joachim's dream. In the months that followed, the Iris Foundation became a reality. Richard used not only the money left by Joachim, but also part of his own fortune to create a shelter for children in situations of abandonment. Iris, even though she was still very young, actively participated in the planning, always offering the unique perspective of someone who had lived through the experience of abandonment. There has to be a big library, she insisted during a planning meeting, because when you don't have anyone, books become your friends. And a garden with lots of flowers, she added, for the children to plant and take care of. That way they learn that they can make things grow and become beautiful. Mrs. Johnson was invited to be the coordinator of the center, a position she accepted with tears of joy. "I never thought that at 71 I would start a new career," she said, "but there is nothing in the world that I would rather do." The first child welcomed by the Iris Foundation was Miguel, a 5-year-old boy found on the streets of Willow Creek in a situation similar to that which Iris had lived through. When he arrived at the center, dirty and scared, Iris approached him naturally. "Hi, I'm Iris," she said. "I was also alone on the streets. But now I'm in a family that loves me very much, and you're going to find a family too." "How do you know?" Miguel asked suspiciously. "Because my grandpa Joaquim said that love always finds a way to reach the children who need it. And he was right." 6 months after the opening of the foundation, something unexpected happened. Celeste appeared at the door of the center, visibly transformed. She had gained healthy weight, her hair was well cared for, and there was a serenity in her eyes that didn't exist before. "I came to ask to see Iris," she said to Mrs. Johnson, who greeted her at the reception. "Celeste, you're different." "I've been in treatment for 6 months. Therapy, medication, support groups. For the first time in my life, I'm trying to truly heal." Mrs. Johnson led her to the garden, where Iris was playing with other children. When the girl saw her mother, she stopped for a moment, then walked calmly to her. "Hi, Mom," Iris said simply. "Hi, my daughter. You look beautiful." "Thank you. You look different too." "I'm trying to get better, to be the mother you deserve to have had." Iris considered that for a moment. "You don't need to be my mother. I already have a family, but you can be my friend if you want." The emotional maturity of Iris, now 7 years old, continued to impress everyone around her. She had found a way to forgive without forgetting, to accept without resenting. "I would love to be your friend," Celeste replied, tears of relief running down her face. "Then you can come visit me sometimes, and you can meet the other children at the foundation. They'll like you." That afternoon, while watching Celeste interacting calmly with the children at the center, Richard reflected on how life had a mysterious way of transforming pain into purpose, abandonment into love, and loneliness into family. "Proud, Dad?" Eleanor asked, approaching him. "More than that," Richard replied. "Grateful for everything that happened, for all the winding paths that brought us here. Iris changed our lives forever, and we changed her life. But I think she changed us more than we changed her." At that moment, Iris ran to them, holding a new drawing. "Look what I did," she said, showing a big house full of smiling children. "It's our foundation, and look here in the sky. It's Grandpa Joaquim watching over us." Richard hugged his sister, knowing that his father would be deeply proud of the legacy they had built. Together, the Iris Foundation was not just a shelter for children. It was proof that genuine love can transcend generations and transform stories of abandonment into stories of hope. 1 year after the opening of the Iris Foundation, everyone's life had settled into a prosperous and meaningful routine. The center already housed 15 children, and 3 of them had been adopted by local families. Iris, now 8 years old, attended the best private school in Willow Creek, where she excelled especially in math and writing. That Tuesday morning, something unusual happened. During breakfast, Iris made an announcement that caught the whole family by surprise. "I want to do a presentation at school about our foundation," she said, cutting her bread with jelly. "This teacher said that we can talk about projects that change people's lives." "Are you sure?" Eleanor asked. "That means telling your own story." "I know, but if my story can help other children not to feel alone, then it's worth telling." Richard observed the determination on his sister's face and felt immense pride. The girl he had found fainting from hunger had transformed into an extraordinary person, willing to use her past pain to build hope for others. "If you're sure, sweetie, we completely support you," he said. but I'm going to need your help to prepare the presentation. In the following days, the family worked together creating a presentation that would tell Iris's story in a way that was appropriate for children, focusing on the message of hope and overcoming adversity. Eleanor helped with the visual aspects, creating drawings that illustrated the girl's journey, while Richard prepared data on the foundation's impact on the community. Mrs. Johnson contributed her unique perspective. Honey, you have to talk about how love can appear in the most unexpected places. That's the most important part of your story. On the day of the presentation, the whole family went to school to support Iris. The principal, teachers, and about 50 students of different ages gathered in the auditorium. When Iris stepped onto the stage, wearing her best dress and carrying the necklace that Joachim had left her, there was a respectful silence. "My name is Iris Davenport," she began in a clear and firm voice. "And I'm going to tell you a story about how a girl who had no family found not only a family, but a mission in life." For 20 minutes, Iris narrated her journey with a maturity that impressed everyone present. She spoke about the difficult days on the streets, about Mrs. Johnson being her first source of kindness, about the day Richard saved her, and about how she discovered that family isn't just about blood, but about love and choice. "Do you know what was the most important part of my whole story?" she asked at the end. "It was discovering that my pain could be transformed into something good for other people. Today, our Iris Foundation has already helped more than 20 children find loving families." When she finished, the auditorium exploded with applause. Several children approached her with questions, and some parents asked for information about how they could help the foundation. But the biggest surprise came from an unexpected source. A girl of about 10, who had watched the presentation in silence, approached Iris with tears in her eyes. "Iris," she said timidly, "my situation is similar to yours. My parents, they argue a lot, and sometimes I'm scared. Do you think someone could help me?" Iris held the girl's hand gently. "What's your name?" "Sophia." "Sophia, I'm going to ask my family to talk to you and your guardians. No one needs to be scared at home." Richard, who heard the conversation, approached the two girls. "Sophia, let's talk to the school principal right now, and then we'll see how we can help your family." That afternoon, they discovered that Sophia lived in a situation of domestic violence that had been ignored for too long. Her parents were going through a serious marital crisis, and the girl was suffering the psychological consequences of the family instability. "It's not exactly the same type of abandonment that Iris lived through," explained the school psychologist, "but it's equally damaging to a child." "What can we do?" Eleanor asked. "The foundation could expand its services. In addition to sheltering abandoned children, you could offer psychological support and family mediation for cases like Sophia's." The idea planted by the psychologist germinated quickly in Richard's mind. That night, he talked to the family about the possibility of expanding the scope of the Iris Foundation. "It would be like a complete childhood support center," he explained. "Not just for abandoned children, but for any child in a vulnerable situation." "I think it's an incredible idea," Eleanor said, "but it will need a lot more resources." "And more qualified people," added Mrs. Johnson. "We have the resources," Richard said, "and we can find the right people. The question is, are you willing to embark on this bigger mission?" "I'm in," Iris replied immediately. "If we can help more children like Sophia, then we have to do it." In the months that followed, the expansion of the Iris Foundation became the most ambitious project Richard had ever undertaken. He hired psychologists, social workers, family mediators, and specialized educators. The center was expanded to include therapy rooms, spaces for family meetings, and a special school for children who had lost a lot of time in formal education. Sophia was one of the first beneficiaries of the new services. Through family therapy, her parents were able to resolve their differences and create a healthier environment for her. The girl, who had become close friends with Iris, visited the foundation regularly as a junior volunteer. "Iris changed my life," Sophia said in an interview for the local newspaper. "She showed me that there is always hope, even when everything seems lost." The repercussion of the foundation's expansion drew statewide attention. Delegations from other cities came to see the project, and Richard was invited to speak about innovation in social assistance. But the recognition that most touched the family came from a completely unexpected source. One Saturday morning, Celeste appeared at the foundation, accompanied by a man they didn't know. "This is Dr. Robert Andrews," she introduced. "He coordinates a similar project in Albany and wants to propose a partnership." "Mr. Davenport," Dr. Andrews said, "your work is serving as a model for the whole state. We would like to create a network of Iris foundations in several cities." The proposal was ambitious, to replicate the model in 10 cities in upstate New York, each adapted to local needs, but all following the principles developed by Iris's experience. "What do you think, sweetie?" Richard asked his sister. "Do you want to help take our idea to other cities?" "I do," Iris replied without hesitation, "but there's one condition." "What?" "Each new foundation has to have at least one child who helps plan the services, because no one understands better than a child what a child needs." The wisdom of Iris, now 8 years old, continued to surprise everyone. Her suggestion was immediately accepted and incorporated into the network project. 3 months later, at a solemn ceremony in New York City, the Iris Foundation Network was officially launched. Iris was invited as the keynote speaker, becoming probably the youngest social consultant in the United States. "When I was alone on the streets," she said to an audience of more than 500 people, including politicians, business leaders, and social activists, "I dreamed of having a family. Today, I discovered that my family doesn't just have 4 people. It has hundreds of children scattered throughout the state who now have hope for a better future." At the end of the ceremony, when they were returning to Willow Creek, Iris made an observation that deeply touched the whole family. "You know," she said, looking out the car window, "I think Grandpa Joachim planned all this from the beginning." "How so?" Eleanor asked. "He knew that if I found you and you loved me, I would want to help other children like me, and he knew that you would support me. So, in fact, he didn't just leave money for a foundation, he left a family that was going to transform that money into love for hundreds of children." The silence that followed was filled with emotion. Everyone realized that Iris had understood something profound about Joachim's legacy. That the real gift wasn't the money, but the capacity for love that he had cultivated in his descendants. "You're very wise for an 8-year-old girl," Richard said proudly. "It's just that when you've been through difficult things, you learn to see what really matters," Iris replied simply. That night, at home, Iris made a special drawing, a giant tree with many branches, each representing one of the foundations in the network. On the trunk, it was written, "Love." On the roots, the names Joachim, Richard, Eleanor, Mrs. Johnson. And at the top of the tree, a phrase that summed it all up, "A family that grows planting love." It was the perfect synthesis of a journey that had begun with abandonment and had transformed into hope for hundreds of children. 2 years had passed since the launch of the Iris Foundation Network, and life seemed to have found a perfect balance. Iris, now 10 years old, stood out as one of the best students at her school, but also as a young activist recognized throughout the state. Her maturity continued to impress everyone, but she still preserved the sweetness and curiosity typical of childhood. One spring morning, while the family was having breakfast in the garden of the house, Richard received a call that would change everything again. It was Dr. Robert Andrews from the State Coordination. "Richard, I need to tell you some extraordinary news," he said, visibly moved even through the phone. "The Department of Education wants to transform the Iris Foundation model into a national public policy." "What do you mean?" Richard asked, signaling everyone to pay attention. "They want to create similar centers in all states of the United States, and they want Iris to be the national ambassador of the project." The silence that followed was of complete surprise. Iris, who had heard the conversation, was thoughtful for a moment before speaking. "Does that mean I would have to travel a lot?" "Probably yes, sweetie," Richard replied. "But it also means that your story could help thousands of children across the country. And would you go with me?" "Always," Eleanor promised. "We're a family. We'll go together wherever it's needed." In the following days, representatives of the federal government came to Willow Creek to personally see the work of the foundation. They were impressed not only with the structure and the results, but mainly with Iris, a girl who spoke about social policies with the expertise of a specialist, but who still played with dolls and loved to draw birds. "Miss Iris," said the Secretary of Education during a meeting, "do you agree to be our ambassador?" "I agree," she replied without hesitation, "but with one condition." "What?" "I want that in each state where we go, a child who has already gone through difficulties helps plan the local center, because each place is different, and children know better than adults what works for them." Iris's proposal was accepted immediately, and thus was born the program Voices of Childhood, where children who had overcome situations of vulnerability became consultants to the new centers. The first official trip of the family was to Miami. Iris, accompanied by Richard, Eleanor, and Mrs. Johnson, met realities completely different from hers, but that shared the same essence: children needing love, care, and opportunities. "It's different from here," Iris observed during a visit to a poor community, "but the loneliness in the children's eyes is the same." In Miami, she met Antonio, a 9-year-old boy who lived with his grandmother in a shack. His parents had migrated to Los Angeles in search of work and never gave news again. His story touched Iris deeply. "Antonio," she said during a conversation, in the courtyard of the local school, "do you want to help create a center here in Miami?" "Me? But I'm just a kid." "I'm just a kid too, but children understand things that adults sometimes forget." During the week they spent in Miami, Iris and Antonio worked together, planning what the local center would be like. They suggested adaptations that the adults hadn't thought of: a space for Cuban cuisine, where children could maintain a connection with their traditions, a library with books in Spanish and English, and activities that respected the local rhythm of life. "You've thought of things that we adults would never have considered," admitted the Municipal Secretary of Social Assistance. Back in Willow Creek, the family processed the experience of Miami. Iris was visibly moved by what she had witnessed. "Brother," she said to Richard one night, using that word for the first time to refer to him, "I think our mission is bigger than we imagined." "How so?" "Each place we visit will teach me something new about being a child in the United States. And each child we meet will show me a different way to be strong." In the months that followed, the trips intensified. They went to New Orleans, where they met children affected by Hurricane Katrina, to Phoenix, where they worked with boys and girls living on the streets, to Chicago, where they faced the reality of children who were working from a very young age to help their families. In each place, Iris found a local child to be her partner, and together they developed specific proposals for that reality. The project grew not only in size, but in complexity and cultural sensitivity. During a visit to Philadelphia, something unexpected happened. Iris met Maya, an 8-year-old girl who lived with dozens of other children in a foster home. But unlike the other children she had met, Maya seemed closed off, distrustful. "Why don't you talk to me?" Iris asked gently. "Because adults always promise things and then leave," Maya replied. "You're going to leave too." "I am," Iris admitted, "but that doesn't mean I'm going to forget about you." "Everyone forgets." Iris thought for a moment, then had an idea. "Maya, do you want to be my pen pal?" "Pen pal!" "Yes. I'll write to you telling you about the places I visit, and you write to me telling me how you are. That way, even far away, we'll continue to be friends." That's how the project Letters of Hope was born. Iris began to correspond with children from all the places she visited, creating a national network of friendship and mutual support. "Now I have friends all over the United States," she said to the family, showing a pile of colorful letters she received weekly. The correspondence became so significant that the government decided to formalize the project. Children in vulnerable situations across the country could register to exchange letters with other children, creating bonds of support and mutual understanding. A year after the start of the national trips, Iris had visited all the states and helped create more than 100 child support centers. But the deepest impact wasn't in the numbers. It was in the transformation that she herself was experiencing. "Dad," she said to Richard one night, using that word for the first time to refer to him, "thank you for saving me that day." "Iris, you've been calling me brother for years. Why did you call me Dad now?" "Because I understood something important. You're not just my blood brother. You're the person who raised me, who taught me values, who has always been by my side. That makes you my dad at heart." Richard was deeply touched. "And you're my daughter at heart." "And Eleanor is my mother at heart," Iris continued, hugging her sister-in-law. "And Mrs. Johnson is my grandmother at heart. We are a real family, not by chance, but by choice." That night, Mrs. Johnson, now 74 years old, and still coordinating the original foundation with impressive energy, made a reflection that touched the whole family. "You know," she said, "when I met Iris that first time in the square, she was just a hungry little girl. Today, she is one of the most important people in the country for American children. But do you know what I'm most proud of about her?" "What?" everyone asked. "It's that even being famous, even being nationally recognized, she continues to be the same kind, humble, and generous girl she always was. Success hasn't changed her heart. That's because I learned from you that the most important thing isn't what we get for ourselves, but what we can do for others," Iris said. That night, before going to sleep, Iris wrote in her diary, a habit she had developed during the trips. "Today I understood that my story isn't just about a girl who was abandoned and then saved. It's about how a family can be born from love, grow with purpose, and multiply, helping other families to form. I think that's what Grandpa Joachim wanted from the beginning, that the love he planted would continue growing and spreading throughout the world." It was a profound reflection for a 10-year-old girl, but one that perfectly summarized the extraordinary journey that had begun with a fainting spell on a dusty sidewalk and had transformed into a national mission of love and hope. But the story still held one last surprise, a discovery that would connect all the dots definitively and reveal the true legacy that Joachim had left for his family and for the United States. On her 11th birthday, Iris received an unexpected gift that would change her perspective on her entire journey. It was a sunny Saturday morning, and the family had organized a party in the garden of the original Iris Foundation, with all the children from the center and some of the pen pals who had come from other cities. "Iris," Richard said during the party, "there's a special gift we've saved for this moment. He handed her an old wooden box with delicate carvings that she immediately recognized. It was the same style as the furniture that Richard manufactured in his company. "This box belonged to Grandpa Joachim," Eleanor explained. "He asked that it be given to you when you turned 11. Iris opened the box carefully, finding inside a collection of old photographs, letters, and a small, leather-bound notebook. The photographs showed Joachim in different moments of his life, some with Richard still a child, others with herself as a baby, and many with children she didn't recognize. "Who are these other children?" she asked, studying the photos. Mrs. Johnson approached, immediately recognizing the images. "They are children that your grandfather helped throughout his life, dear. Long before you were born, long before the foundation existed, Joachim already dedicated his life to taking care of needy children." Iris picked up the notebook and began to read. It was Joachim's personal diary, telling decades of stories about boys and girls he had found in difficult situations. Each entry revealed a man deeply committed to protecting children, long before it became a public cause. 1987, she read aloud. "Today I found John, 7 years old, living under the bridge. I took him home, gave him food and clean clothes. Mary complains that our house is turning into an orphanage, but I can't close my eyes to a child in suffering." "Mary was your grandmother," Richard explained. "She supported your grandfather, even though she complained sometimes." Iris continued reading. 1991. "Peter was adopted by a family in Los Angeles. I cried with joy to see him leave happy. This is the 10th child we've managed to find a good family for this year." "Grandpa did this alone?" Iris asked, impressed. "Not alone," Mrs. Johnson replied. "He had a network of friends who helped, merchants who donated food, families who opened their homes, doctors who provided free care. It was a small version of what you have created today." Iris turned more pages, discovering that Joachim had helped more than 200 children over 40 years. It was a silent work, without public recognition, moved only by compassion. 1995, she read. "Anne Caroline graduated as a doctor today. She was one of the first children I helped 15 years ago. Now she wants to be a pediatrician to repay the kindness she received. The cycle continues." "Iris," Richard said gently, "your grandfather wrote something special for you on the last pages." She skipped to the end of the diary, finding a letter, dated just a few months before Joachim's death. "My dear granddaughter Iris, if you are reading this, it is because you have found your true family and discovered your mission in life. I want you to know that every child I helped over the years was training to take care of you, and you are my training to teach the world that love can change generations." The letter continued. "It was not a coincidence that you were born into our family, nor was it a coincidence that you went through hardships. It's all part of a bigger plan. You needed to understand the pain to be able to heal it in others. Now you know that our mission didn't start with you, and it won't end with you. It's a legacy that passes from generation to generation, a chain of love that can never be broken." Tears ran down Iris's face as she read the final words, "Be proud of who you are, my granddaughter. You are not just a child who was saved. You are the continuation of a dream that began long before you were born and that will continue long after we all leave. Love other children as you have been loved. Save other families as your family was saved. And always remember, true love never dies. It only multiplies." When she finished reading, Iris remained silent for several minutes, processing the dimension of what she had discovered. All the children at the party approached, sensing that something important was happening. "Miguel," she said to the first boy they had welcomed into the foundation, "did you know that our story started long before we were born?" "What do you mean, Iris?" "My grandfather was already saving children for 40 years, and every child He saved, grew up, and saved others. We are part of a giant chain of love. Sophia, who had become her best friend since the episode at school, asked a question that touched the heart of the matter. Does that mean that one day we are going to save other children too? It means that we are already saving, Iris replied wisely. Every time we are kind to someone, every time we help a child who is sad, every time we show that it is possible to be happy after going through bad things, we are continuing Grandpa Joachim's work. At that moment, Antonio, the boy from Miami, who had become the junior coordinator of the local center, spoke through a video call that they had prepared as a surprise. Iris, he said from the computer screen, I want to tell you something. Remember Maya from Philadelphia, who exchanged letters with you? Of course I remember. She was adopted last month by a wonderful family. And you know what she told me, that it was through your letters that she learned to trust adults again. The news filled Iris's heart with joy. Is she okay? Very well. And she's helping other children at the institution where she lived. She says she wants to be like you when she grows up. After the party, when the children went to sleep, the family gathered on the porch for a conversation that had become a tradition in important moments. Dad, Iris said, now I understand why you saved me that day. It wasn't just your kindness. It was because Grandpa taught you that saving children is our family mission. Maybe, Richard admitted, but it was also because you touched my heart in a special way. And now, Eleanor asked, what do we do with all that we've discovered? Iris thought for a moment before answering. Now we continue, but now we know that we're not just creating something new, we're continuing something that already existed, and that makes me feel even more responsible. Responsible how? Responsible for ensuring that this chain of love is never broken, that there is always someone from our family taking care of children who need help. Mrs. Johnson, who had observed the conversation in silence, finally spoke. Iris, can I tell you a secret? You can. Your grandfather told me once that he was sure that you would be special. He said that he could see in your eyes, even when you were a baby, that you had a different light, a light that was going to illuminate the path for many other children. He really said that? He did. And he asked me to take care of you if something happened to him. That's why I didn't hesitate to help her when I found you in the square. Iris hugged Mrs. Johnson tightly. So you're also part of Grandpa's plan. We're all part of it, dear. Your biological family, your family at heart, all the children we help, all the families we form. We are all part of something much bigger than ourselves. That night, Iris wrote in her diary a reflection that perfectly summarized her new understanding. Today, I discovered that my story didn't start when I was born, and it won't end when I die. I'm part of a chain of love that started with my grandfather, passed through my father, reached me, and will continue through the children we're helping today. That makes me feel small and giant at the same time. Small because I'm just a little piece of this huge story, but giant because I carry the responsibility of keeping this story alive. It was a profound understanding for an 11-year-old girl, but one that revealed the true dimension of the legacy that Joachim had left. Not just money or properties, but a life mission that transcended generations and that transformed each person touched by it into a guardian of love and hope for the next generations of needy children. 5 years had passed since Iris discovered her grandfather's diary, and her life had reached a dimension that few could imagine. At 16, she had become the youngest advisor to the National Council for Children's Rights, in addition to having written a book about her experience that became a reference in social assistance in the United States. But on that December morning, Christmas Eve, something unexpected happened that would test all the wisdom and maturity she had acquired over the years. Iris, Richard said, entering her room with a worried expression. I need to tell you something important. What happened? Dad? Your mother, Celeste, she's in the hospital, serious condition. Iris, who was organizing Christmas presents for the children at the foundation, immediately stopped what she was doing. What's wrong with her? Cancer. They discovered it 3 months ago, but she didn't want to tell us. Only now, when the doctor said that the time is limited, she asked to see you. During all those years, Celeste had maintained sporadic contact with the family. She visited Iris 2 or 3 times a year, always respecting the established limits, always showing genuine pride in her daughter's successes. She had become a different woman, stable, working as a volunteer at a rehabilitation center, finally at peace with herself. She wants to see me, Iris asked, her voice revealing a mixture of concern and uncertainty. She does, but you don't have to go if you don't feel ready. Iris was silent for a few moments, processing the news. Then she surprised Richard with her answer. I want to go see her, not out of obligation, but because I think I need to do it. Are you sure? I am. I learned from Grandpa Joachim that true love includes forgiveness and compassion, even in the most difficult situations. At the hospital, Iris found Celeste visibly debilitated, but with her eyes still shining with intelligence and emotion. When she saw her daughter enter the room, Celeste smiled with a mixture of joy and sadness. My girl, she said in a weak voice, how beautiful you've grown. Hi, Celeste, Iris replied, sitting next to the bed. How are you feeling? Better now that you're here. Iris, I know that our relationship has always been complicated, but I wanted to tell you how proud I am of who you have become. Thank you. You saved more children in 16 years than I managed to take care of my own daughter in 6, Celeste continued, tears running down her face. That hurts me, but it also fills me with pride. Iris held Celeste's hand. You don't need to feel guilty. You gave me life, and that's already very important. But I didn't give you love when you needed it. Maybe because you didn't know how, but it's not too late for us to love each other the way we are today. During the 2 hours they spent together, Celeste told Iris about her struggle against addiction, about her volunteer work, about how she followed all of her daughter's successes from afar through newspapers and the internet. Iris, she said as the visit was coming to an end, there's something I need to ask you. What is it? Forgiveness. I know that you have already forgiven me in many ways, but I need to hear it from you one last time. Iris looked into Celeste's eyes and saw not the woman who had abandoned her, but a person who had fought against her own limitations and found, too late, a way to love. I forgive you, Celeste, completely, and I want you to know that, in my own way, I love you too. Thank you, my daughter. Now I can leave in peace. Celeste passed away 3 days later, at the end of Christmas Eve. Iris cried, not for the mother she never had, but for the imperfect woman who had tried in her own way to find redemption. The funeral was simple but meaningful. Richard, Eleanor, Mrs. Johnson, some children from the foundation, and surprisingly, many people that Celeste had helped during her years of volunteer work were present. She changed our lives, said a woman Iris didn't know. Celeste helped us get off drugs, find work, rebuild our families. She was a special person. Iris realized that, just like her, Celeste had found a way to transform her pain into purpose, her guilt into positive action. It was too late to be the mother Iris needed, but it wasn't too late to be the help that other people needed. A week after the funeral, Iris made a decision that surprised the whole family. I want to create a special program at the foundation, she announced during a meeting, for mothers who have abandoned their children and want to rehabilitate. What do you mean? That night, Mrs. Johnson, now 74 years old and still coordinating the original foundation with impressive energy, made a reflection that touched the whole family. You know, she said, when I met Iris that first time in the square, she was just a hungry little girl. Today, she's one of the most important people in the country for American children. But do you know what I'm most proud of about her? What? Everyone asked. It's that even being famous, even being nationally recognized, she continues to be the same kind, humble, and generous girl she always was. Success hasn't changed her heart. That's because I learned from you that the most important thing isn't what we get for ourselves, but what we can do for others, Iris said. That night, before going to sleep, Iris wrote in her diary, a habit she had developed during the trips. Today, I understood that my story isn't just about a girl who was abandoned and then saved. It's about how a family can be born from love, grow with purpose, and multiply, helping other families to form. I think that's what Grandpa Joachim wanted from the beginning, that the love he planted would continue growing and spreading throughout the world. And Dee, it was a profound reflection for a 10-year-old girl, but one that perfectly summarized the extraordinary journey that had begun with a fainting spell on a dusty sidewalk and had transformed into a national mission of love and hope. But the story still held one last surprise, a discovery that would connect all the dots definitively and reveal the true legacy that Joachim had left for his family and for the United States. On her 11th birthday, Iris received an unexpected gift that would change her perspective on her entire journey. It was a sunny Saturday morning, and the family had organized a party in the garden of the original Iris Foundation, with all the children from the center and some of the pen pals who had come from other cities. "Iris," Richard said during the party, "there's a special gift we've saved for this moment." He handed her an old wooden box with delicate carvings that she immediately recognized. It was the same style as the furniture that Richard manufactured in his company. "This box belonged to Grandpa Joachim," Eleanor explained. "He asked that it be given to you when you turned 11. Iris opened the box carefully, finding inside a collection of old photographs, letters, and a small leather-bound notebook. The photographs showed Joachim in different moments of his life, some with Richard still a child, others with herself as a baby, and many with children she didn't recognize. "Who are these other children?" she asked, studying the photos. Mrs. Johnson approached, immediately recognizing the images. "They are children that your grandfather helped throughout his life, dear. Long before you were born, long before the foundation existed, Joachim already dedicated his life to taking care of needy children." Iris picked up the notebook and began to read. It was Joachim's personal diary, telling decades of stories about boys and girls he had found in difficult situations. Each entry revealed a man deeply committed to protecting children, long before it became a public cause. 1987. She read aloud. "Today I found John, 7 years old, living under the bridge. I took him home, gave him food and clean clothes. Mary complains that our house is turning into an orphanage, but I can't close my eyes to a child in suffering." "Mary was your grandmother," Richard explained. "She supported your grandfather, even though she complained sometimes." Iris continued reading. 1991, Peter was adopted by a family in Los Angeles. I cried with joy to see him leave happy. This is the 10th child we've managed to find a good family for this year. "Grandpa did this alone?" Iris asked, impressed. "Not alone," Mrs. Johnson replied. "He had a network of friends who helped, merchants who donated food, families who opened their homes, doctors who provided free care. It was a small version of what you have created today." Iris turned more pages, discovering that Joachim had helped more than 200 children over 40 years. It was a silent work, without public recognition, moved only by compassion. 1995, she read. "Anne Caroline graduated as a doctor today. She was one of the first children I helped 15 years ago. Now she wants to be a pediatrician to repay the kindness she received. The cycle continues. Iris, Richard said gently, your grandfather wrote something special for you on the last pages. She skipped to the end of the diary, finding a letter, dated just a few months before Joachim's death. My dear granddaughter Iris, if you are reading this, it is because you have found your true family and discovered your mission in life. I want you to know that every child I helped over the years was training to take care of you, and you are my training to teach the world that love can change generations. The letter continued. It was not a coincidence that you were born into a family, nor was it a coincidence that you went through hardships. It's all part of a bigger plan. You needed to understand the pain, to be able to heal it in others. Now you know that our mission didn't start with you, and it won't end with you. It's a legacy that passes from generation to generation, a chain of love that can never be broken. Tears ran down Iris's face as she read the final words. Be proud of who you are, my granddaughter. You are not just a child who was saved. You are the continuation of a dream that began long before you were born, and that will continue long after we all leave. Love other children as you have been loved. Save other families as your family was saved. And always remember, true love never dies, it only multiplies. When she finished reading, Iris remained silent for several minutes, processing the dimension of what she had discovered. All the children at the party approached, sensing that something important was happening. Miguel, she said to the first boy they had welcomed into the foundation, did you know that our story started long before we were born? What do you mean, Iris? My grandfather was already saving children for 40 years, and every child he saved grew up and saved others. We are part of a giant chain of love. Sophia, who had become her best friend since the episode at school, asked a question that touched the heart of the matter. Does that mean that one day we are going to save other children too? It means that we are already saving, Iris replied wisely. Every time we are kind to someone, every time we help a child who is sad, every time we show that it is possible to be happy after going through bad things, we are continuing Grandpa Joachim's work. At that moment, Antonio, the boy from Miami, who had become the junior coordinator of the local center, spoke through a video call that they had prepared as a surprise. Iris, he said from the computer screen, I want to tell you something. Remember Maya from Philadelphia who exchanged letters with you? Of course, I remember. She was adopted last month by a wonderful family, and you know what she told me, that it was through your letters that she learned to trust adults again. The news filled Iris's heart with joy. Is she okay? Very well, and she's helping other children at the institution where she lived. She says she wants to be like you when she grows up. After the party, when the children went to sleep, the family gathered on the porch for a conversation that had become a tradition in important moments. Dad, Iris said, now I understand why you saved me that day. It wasn't just your kindness, it was because Grandpa taught you that saving children is our family mission. Maybe, Richard admitted, but it was also because you touched my heart in a special way. And now, Eleanor asked, what do we do with all that we've discovered? Iris thought for a moment before answering. Now we continue, but now we know that we're not just creating something new, we're continuing something that already existed. And that makes me feel even more responsible. Responsible how? Responsible for ensuring that this chain of love is never broken, that there is always someone from our family taking care of children who need help. Mrs. Johnson, who had observed the conversation in silence, finally spoke. Iris, can I tell you a secret? You can. Your grandfather told me once that he was sure that you would be special. He said that he could see in your eyes, even when you were a baby, that you had a different light, a light that was going to illuminate the path for many other Children. He really said that? He did, and he asked me to take care of you if something happened to him. That's why I didn't hesitate to help her when I found you in the square. Iris hugged Mrs. Johnson tightly. So you're also part of Grandpa's plan. We're all part of it, dear. Your biological family, your family at heart, all the children we help, all the families we form. We are all part of something much bigger than ourselves. That night, Iris wrote in her diary a reflection that perfectly summarized her new understanding. Today, I discovered that my story didn't start when I was born, and it won't end when I die. I'm part of a chain of love that started with my grandfather, passed through my father, reached me, and will continue through the children we're helping today. That makes me feel small and giant at the same time. Small because I'm just a little piece of this huge story, but giant because I carry the responsibility of keeping this story alive. It was a profound understanding for an 11-year-old girl, but one that revealed the true dimension of the legacy that Joachim had left. Not just money or properties, but a life mission that transcended generations and that transformed each person touched by it into a guardian of love and hope for the next generations of needy children. 5 years had passed since Iris discovered her grandfather's diary, and her life had reached a dimension that few could imagine. At 16, she had become the youngest advisor to the National Council for Children's Rights, in addition to having written a book about her experience that became a reference in social assistance in the United States. But on that December morning, Christmas Eve, something unexpected happened that would test all the wisdom and maturity she had acquired over the years. "Iris," Richard said, entering her room with a worried expression, "I need to tell you something important." "What happened, Dad?" "Your mother, Celeste. She's in the hospital, serious condition." Iris, who was organizing Christmas presents for the children at the foundation, immediately stopped what she was doing. "What's wrong with her?" "Cancer. They discovered it 3 months ago, but she didn't want to tell us. Only now, when the doctor said that the time is limited, she asked to see you." During all those years, Celeste had maintained sporadic contact with the family. She visited Iris 2 or 3 times a year, always respecting the established limits, always showing genuine pride in her daughter's successes. She had become a different woman, stable, working as a volunteer at a rehabilitation center, finally at peace with herself. "She wants to see me?" Iris asked, her voice revealing a mixture of concern and uncertainty. "She does. But you don't have to go if you don't feel ready." Iris was silent for a few moments, processing the news. Then she surprised Richard with her answer. "I want to go see her, not out of obligation, but because I think I need to do it." "Are you sure?" "I am. I learned from Grandpa Joachim that true love includes forgiveness and compassion, even in the most difficult situations." At the hospital, Iris found Celeste visibly debilitated, but with her eyes still shining with intelligence and emotion. When she saw her daughter enter the room, Celeste smiled with a mixture of joy and sadness. "My girl," she said in a weak voice, "how beautiful you've grown." "Hi, Celeste," Iris replied, sitting next to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better now that you're here." "Iris, I know that our relationship has always been complicated, but I wanted to tell you how proud I am of who you have become." "Thank you. You saved more children in 16 years than I managed to take care of my own daughter in 6, Celeste continued, tears running down her face. "That hurts me, but it also fills me with pride." Iris held Celeste's hand. "You don't need to feel guilty. You gave me life, and that's already very important, but I didn't give you love when you needed it. Maybe because you didn't know how. But it's not too late for us to love each other the way we are today." During the 2 hours they spent, Together, Celeste told Iris about her struggle against addiction, about her volunteer work, about how she followed all of her daughter's successes from afar through newspapers and the internet. "Iris," she said as the visit was coming to an end, "there's something I need to ask you." "What is it?" "Forgiveness. I know that you have already forgiven me in many ways, but I need to hear it from you one last time." Iris looked into Celeste's eyes and saw not the woman who had abandoned her, but a person who had fought against her own limitations and found, too late, a way to love. "I forgive you, Celeste, completely, and I want you to know that in my own way, I love you too." "Thank you, my daughter. Now I can leave in peace." Celeste passed away 3 days later, at the end of Christmas Eve. Iris cried, not for the mother she never had, but for the imperfect woman who had tried, in her own way, to find redemption. The funeral was simple, but meaningful. Richard, Eleanor, Mrs. Johnson, some children from the foundation, and surprisingly, many people that Celeste had helped during her years of volunteer work, were present. "She changed our lives," said a woman. "Iris didn't know. Celeste helped us get off drugs, find work, rebuild our families. She was a special person." Iris realized that just like her, Celeste had found a way to transform her pain into purpose, her guilt into positive action. It was too late to be the mother Iris needed, but it wasn't too late to be the help that other people needed. A week after the funeral, Iris made a decision that surprised the whole family. "I want to create a special program at the foundation," she announced during a meeting, "for mothers who have abandoned their children and want to rehabilitate." "What do you mean?" Eleanor asked. "Many women do what Celeste did not out of malice, but because of illness, addiction, psychological problems," Iris explained. "If they want to get treatment and recover, we should give them that chance. And if they can't recover, at least we tried. And if they can help other women in the same situation. It can be another type of chain of love. Mothers helping other mothers to become better." The proposal was accepted, and 6 months later, the Fresh Start program was born, aimed at mothers in vulnerable situations who wish to rehabilitate and, when possible, reconnect with their children in a healthy way. The first case attended was that of Lucy, a 35-year-old woman who had abandoned 2 children due to alcohol addiction. Through the program, she managed to get treatment, find employment, and gradually rebuild a relationship with the children, who had been adopted by a family that allowed supervised contact. "Iris," Lucy said during a group therapy session, "you gave me the chance that no one else would. The chance to be a mother again, even though I had failed before." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Iris replied. "My biological mother taught me that." The program expanded rapidly, being implemented in all units of the Iris Foundation network. In 2 years, more than 500 women had gone through the rehabilitation process, and about 200 had managed to rebuild healthy bonds with their children. One autumn afternoon, Iris received an unexpected visit. It was Dr. Robert Andrews, accompanied by an elegant woman she didn't know. "Iris," Dr. Andrews said, "this is Dr. Anne Caroline Mendez, pediatrician and director of the Children's Hospital of New York." "Nice to meet you," Iris said, shaking the woman's hand. "Iris," Dr. Anne Caroline said with a nostalgic smile, "I have a story to tell you. 25 years ago, I was a street kid who was saved by a very special man. He gave me food, shelter, education, and most importantly, love. That man was called Joachim Davenport." Iris's eyes widened. "You're one of the children that my grandfather helped?" "I am, and today I am a doctor because he believed in me when no one else did. When I heard about your story and the work of the foundation, I understood that it was time to give back." "Give back how?" I want to create a pediatric hospital specializing in children victims of abandonment and mistreatment, a place where they receive not only medical treatment but also psychological support and social assistance. And I want to do this in partnership with the Iris Foundation. Dr. Anne Caroline's proposal represented another link in the chain of love started by Joachim. One of the children he had saved decades ago was returning to further expand the impact of the work he had started. Dr. Anne Caroline, Iris said, moved, my grandfather would be very proud to see how the seed he planted in you flourished. And I'm proud to see how the seed he planted in you has become a whole forest, the doctor replied. That night, Iris wrote in her diary a reflection that perfectly captured what she had understood. Today, I understood that Grandpa Joachim's chain of love is even bigger than I imagined. It's not just our family that carries this legacy. It's all the people he touched throughout his life and who are now spread throughout the country, doing good, saving other lives. We are a giant family, united not by blood, but by the love we learned from him. And now that family is growing even more, including people like Dr. Anne Caroline, who returns to expand the work that began with her own salvation. She continued, I understand now that my mission is not only to continue Grandpa's work, but also to ensure that all the people who have been touched by that love reconnect and work together. We are a network, not just of foundations, but of hearts united by the same purpose. It was a profound understanding that prepared Iris for the last chapter of her journey, not the end of her story, but the beginning of a new phase where she would become not only the continuer of Joachim's legacy, but also the reunifier of all those who had been touched by his kindness over 5 decades. 10 years had passed since Celeste's death, and Iris, now 26 years old, had become one of the most respected personalities in the United States in the area of child rights. Graduated in psychology with a specialization in child development, she divided her time between the national coordination of the Iris Foundation network, her doctoral studies, and a special project that she had been developing in secret for 2 years. On that September morning, which marked exactly 20 years since Richard had found her fainting on the street, Iris had an extraordinary surprise to present to the family. She gathered everyone in the living room of the house in Willow Creek, Richard now 65 years old but still vigorous, Eleanor, who had married and had 2 young children, and Mrs. Johnson, 83 years old, still lucid and active as coordinator emeritus of the original foundation. Family, Iris began, holding a bulky folder. Today marks exactly 20 years since our journey began, and I discovered something that will thrill all of you. What is it, my daughter? Richard asked, intrigued. Remember that 2 years ago, I started a master's project on the social impact of child assistance initiatives. Of course, Eleanor replied. You were researching several organizations across the country. In fact, I was doing something much more specific, Iris revealed with a smile. I was tracking all the people that Grandpa Joachim helped throughout his life, and all the people that those people helped afterwards. I wanted to map the true reach of the chain of love that he started. She opened the folder, revealing hundreds of documents, photographs, and colorful graphs. What I discovered exceeded all my expectations, she continued, her voice choked with emotion. In the last 5 decades, the chain started by Grandpa Joachim has directly touched the lives of more than 10,000 children. The silence that followed was of complete disbelief. 10,000, Mrs. Johnson murmured. 10,347 to be exact, Iris confirmed, showing a detailed spreadsheet. Counting the 200 children that he himself helped, the more than 800 that our official network has served, and all the others who have been helped by people he touched indirectly. She began to show specific examples. Remember Anne Caroline, the doctor he saved. She alone has served more than 3,000 children in the hospital we created, and of those 3,000, at least 500 were in situations of abandonment or abuse. "And what about Peter, whom he mentioned in the diary?" Richard asked. "Peter became an educator and created a school for underprivileged children in Los Angeles. He has already graduated more than 1,000 students, many of whom have become teachers, doctors, social workers," Iris replied, leafing through her documents. "And here's the most incredible thing. John, that boy he found under the bridge in 1987, is now a judge in the Children's Court in Albany. He told me that his mission is to ensure that no child goes through what he went through." Tears ran down everyone's faces as Iris continued revealing story after story of transformation and multiplication of love. "But the most exciting discovery," she said, "was this one here." She showed a photograph of a middle-aged woman surrounded by dozens of children. "This is Martha Oliveira, today 52 years old. She was one of the first children that Grandpa helped in 1975. She got off the streets, was educated, got married, and today coordinates an orphanage in the Midwest that has already welcomed more than 1,000 children. When I found her and told her about our connection, she cried for an entire hour." "Did she remember Grandpa?" Eleanor asked. "Perfectly. She told me that Joachim was the first person who treated her like a human being, not like a nuisance. And that was why she dedicated her life to making other children feel important." Iris continued revealing her research. Teachers who had been saved by Joachim and then educated thousands of students. Doctors who treated tens of thousands of patients. Social workers who saved hundreds of families. And even politicians who created laws to protect children. "Dad," she said, addressing Richard, "do you know why Grandpa chose you to continue this work?" "Why?" "Because he knew that you wouldn't do it alone. He knew that you would build a family and that that family would expand the impact far beyond what he managed to do alone." She showed more numbers. "Our official network has already directly served 842 children. Of these, 315 have been adopted by loving families, 208 are studying with scholarships we have obtained, and 119 are already in university or starting professional careers." "And indirectly?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "Indirectly through the training programs, seminars, books, lectures, and the multiplication of the model, we have touched the lives of more than 50,000 children across the United States." Richard stood up and walked to the window, observing the garden where it all had started. 50,000 children, he murmured. "My father never imagined that his kindness would reach so far." "But I'm not done yet," Iris said with a mysterious smile. "The best part comes now." She picked up another set of documents. "Based on all this research, I wrote a project that was approved by the federal government. We're going to create the Joachim Davenport University, specializing in training professionals to work with vulnerable children." "A university?" Eleanor exclaimed. "Yes, it will be built right here in Willow Creek on the land that Dad donated. It will have courses in child psychology, social pedagogy, social assistance, child law, and pediatric medicine. All free, with beaux jute scholarships for students who have a history of social vulnerability." "And who is going to run this university?" Richard asked. "We are. The whole family. Dr. Anne Caroline agreed to be the dean, you will be the president of the board, Eleanor will take care of the architectural projects, Mrs. Johnson will be our emeritus consultant, and I will be the pedagogical coordinator. And the professors. They will be people who have been touched by Grandpa Joachim's chain. I already have confirmation from 30 professionals who want to participate, all with stories similar to ours." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Iris smiled. "In fact, some of them are here to meet you." She went to the door and came back accompanied by 5 people: Dr. Peter Santos, the educator; John Ferreira, the judge; Martha Oliveira, who had travelled from the Midwest; Charles Ribeiro, a businessman who had been helped by Joaquim in the 80s; and Mary Fernandez, a psychologist who coordinated a shelter in the south of the country. "Guys," Iris said, "this is my family, the family that continued the work that saved you too." What followed was an emotional meeting, where each person shared their story of transformation and how they had dedicated their lives to helping others. Everyone had one thing in common: a deep gratitude to Joaquim Davenport and the desire to perpetuate his legacy. "Mr. Davenport," said Dr. Peter, "your father saved me when I was 8 years old. Today, at 43, I have already helped more than 1,000 children to become literate, all because a kind man believed in me. And now we're going to work together so that this chain never stops," added John, the judge. At night, after the visitors left, the family gathered one last time on the porch to process everything that had been discovered. "Iris," Richard said, "do you realize the dimension of what your grandfather created?" "I realize it, Dad. And I also realize that our responsibility is immense. We can't let this chain break." "It won't break," Eleanor assured. "Look how many people are committed to this. It's bigger than any of us." Mrs. Johnson, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, finally spoke. "Iris, honey, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, Grandma. Are you happy? With all this responsibility, are you genuinely happy?" Iris smiled, the same radiant smile that had conquered the family 20 years ago. "I am, Grandma. I'm happy because I discovered my purpose. I'm happy because I have a family that loves me unconditionally. And I'm happy because I know that my childhood pain has been transformed into hope for thousands of other children." "And what about the future? Do you want to start your own family?" "I already have my family," Iris replied, hugging everyone. "But yes, one day I want to get married and have children. And when that happens, they will grow up knowing that they are part of something much bigger. That carrying the Davenport name means carrying the responsibility of taking care of those in need." That night, Iris wrote the last entry in her diary, which had become a historical document of the family's journey. "Today, I completed 20 years of life with my true family. I discovered that I am part of a chain of love that has touched more than 10,000 lives, and that will continue to touch thousands more. I am no longer the abandoned girl who fainted from hunger on a sidewalk. I am a woman who has found her purpose, transforming pain into love, abandonment into welcome, loneliness into family." Grandpa Joaquim was right. True love never dies, it only multiplies. And today, I know that our chain of love is eternal, because every life we touch touches other lives, which touch other lives in an infinite multiplication of kindness. My story is not about a girl who was saved. It's about how a family can be born from love, grow with purpose, and become the seed of transformation for thousands of other families. It's about how the kindness of one person can echo through generations, changing the world one child at a time. And this is just the beginning. 20 years after that fateful day when a girl fainted from hunger in front of a fabric store, the chain of love, started by Joaquim Davenport, had transformed into a transformative force that would continue impacting lives for generations to come. The little Iris, who one day only wanted a family, had found not only a family, but a mission that would make her one of the most important people in the history of child protection in the United States. And that was just the first page of a legacy that would last forever.